Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, I'm David Chapman. I'm the Director General of the WYSE Travel Confederation. We're based out of Amsterdam. WYSE stands for the World Youth, Student and Educational Travel Confederation, and we're the representative body for youth and student travel operators. As an association, we effectively revolve around four pillars of work that we do for our members, and these are research, trading, education and advocacy. But today, what I'm going to do is to talk to you a little bit about some of our research, what we have found about youth and student travellers and how they might affect the marketplace, and how you can use some of this information to base some of your decisions upon for your business. So before we start, I'm just going to talk quickly about New Horizons. This is a project that we've been doing now since 2002. And what's good about it is that we're now being able to see ageing trends of the users, because we've now got effectively 20 years worth of data. And we started in 2002 with only a very small sample of about 2,000 respondents. And we managed to get that up to around 35,000 respondents by 2012, and an astonishing 57,000 respondents for 2017. And what this does is really makes the data that we hold about the trends of youth and student travel really quite undeniable. And we've worked very closely with the WTO over the years in terms of being able to validate our figures and be able to use these figures to really understand what the youth and student marketplace is about. So just to give you an idea, here are some outline statistics on youth and students, but I think what's more important is to understand that the average trip taken by a youth traveller in 2007 is as long as 52 days, and that's actually down very slightly from 2012. And the average age of respondents in our survey was 24, and the largest single group age group was between 20 and 22, who accounted for around 33% of the respondents. Generally speaking, we found that young travellers are very well educated. Half of them hold a bachelor's degree, 13% have a postgrad degree. And students account for just over 60% of all youth travellers. A large portion of youth travellers work full-time or part-time, and work is often combined with study and, of course, travel. The main purpose of travel reported by the respondents was holidays, with 38% of people rating that as being extremely important. And the most important forms of purposeful travel was language learning at 23%, study and work experiences. And travel styles that young people identified with most readily in 2017 were as a traveller at 48%, a tourist at 26%, and a backpacker at 13%. Interestingly, within the youth travel marketplace, we've seen the naming of tourism, or the nomenclature of tourism, tourists, fall back considerably, with youth travellers tending to call themselves travellers or nomads or digital nomads rather than using the tourist term. So youth travel really is quite a valuable sector to the market, and I think a lot of companies, destinations, governments, NTOs really do overlook the youth travel and don't understand. As we saw on the previous slide, it's accounting for nearly 1 in 4 arrivals into a destination on average, and in a lot of countries it's significantly higher than that. But the average trip expenditure in 2017 by a young traveller was nearly €3,000. And when you take into account exchange rate fluctuations and inflation, this figure has grown by 18% since 2012. And although young travellers tend to have fairly low incomes, their travel expenditure can quite often outweigh that of the conventional tourist. Over half of the respondents to our survey had an annual income of less than €5,000. But nonetheless, youth travel has been boosted by millennials spending their parents' budget. I think that probably resounds with a lot of you in this room. It also helps that youth travellers are able to amass quite a considerable budget, even though their own earning capacities may be limited. And a lot of them have done that through not only parents, but also through their own earnings and their own savings. What we've also seen is a doubling in sponsorships and grants as forms of funding for travelling since 2012. The latest buzz in this marketplace is about the digital nomad, and essentially these are people who are location independent and use technology to combine work and travel into a non-9-to-5 lifestyle in changing environments, presumably in the hopes of invigorating creativity and productivity. Not only are thousands of young travellers taking advantage of remote working options and are heading out to make the best of both worlds, but we're seeing more and more destinations attempting to attract the digital nomads by providing facilities and inspiration. And we're seeing a lot in terms of fast Wi-Fi, very hip co-working spaces, flexible accommodation and so on to fulfil needs. And I think that was what was mentioned a few minutes ago. Our current research estimates that there are around 1.8 digital nomads out there, and the estimate is there to be an astonishing 1 billion nomads by 2035. Experiences are more important than stuff. This is something that we've found with all of our research. The unique, immersive, once-in-a-lifetime travel experiences are no longer the Kodak moments and nostalgic memories that they used to be. They're the social currency of millennials and Gen Z. The search for experience is implicit with every flick through an Instagram feed and is apparently worth prioritising over material goods such as cars and homes. And there's clear evidence of a greater desire for experiences amongst young travellers. When the same in-destination activities are compared between 2012 and 2017, the average level of participation has grown by 26%. The growth in activities was most notable for the under 20 age group. Young travellers in 2017 did almost more of everything. The only activity that declined was visiting nightclubs. Sports events and activities both saw little change, but the activities that saw the largest increase was living like a local, which rose from 28% in 2012 to 51% in 2017. We also measured splurging. We asked young people what did they think was worth spending that little bit extra on. And the traditional items of room upgrades and the bit of extra space on an aeroplane, those are not things that young people are looking for anymore. They're really looking for food and drink experiences first, followed by festivals afterwards. And we're seeing a lot of changes in those marketplaces with companies now providing multiple destination festival trips. So just quickly touching on the UK attracted some 39 million international visitors in 2017, compared with 29.3 million in 2012. And a lot of that recent growth has been stimulated by the fall in the value of the pound with the terrible B word that's around at the moment. But the UK has long been an important youth and student destination. There were 442 international students enrolled in UK universities in 2017, and a further 1.1 million visitors coming for language education. And language travel accounts for 3.3% of all international arrivals, but for 5.9% of travel spending. So it's a very good market. Finally, I'm just going to leave you with a couple of nostalgic moments. How many of you remember these? Who remembers the phone box, hitchhiking and the postcard? We measured these as things that young people used up until 2012, when it became very obvious that people weren't using phone boxes any longer and hitchhiking was going out of fashion. So what's replaced those? Well, it becomes the Wi-Fi, car sharing with BlaBlaCar and Instagram as the postcard. And we've seen a rise in the car sharing market. That's really grown back up to about 20%, mainly by the under 20-year-old age group. So you can see that some of the old traditional things that perhaps some of us used in our days of travelling are being reinvented. So that's me in terms of youth travel.
Thank you very much on time, and great new interpretation of youth travel. Thank you very much, David. Now, my question is, youth travel, isn't it pretty much self-organized, really? Is there a big market for tour operators in youth travel, do you see?
Well, it depends which section you're looking at. I mean, certain elements are self-organised. If you're looking at particularly the backpacking and the tourist/holiday element, yes, that is reasonably well self-organised. But when you're looking at things like cultural exchange programmes, work abroad, work experience and those sort of things, no, there's a lot of work with that. A lot of agency work in moving people from one country to another, and I'm particularly thinking of things like the J1 visa programme for work experience into the US, the exchange programmes into Australia for work and travel. So there are au pairing, for example, there's a lot of agency work for those elements. Yeah. Then, of course, you've got education and language travel, and you've got big companies involved, particularly in the education side and the language learning side. So, yeah, it's a big market.
But in the segment for leisure only, is it the same?
Well, I think if you ask a company like STA Travel or Kilroy Travel or some of the other big travel agencies that only work with youth travellers, I think they would probably disagree with you on that. I mean, I know, for example, STA Travel moved the equivalent of 2 A380s through Dubai every day. So that's 1,000 young travellers through the Middle East every day.
Wow. Okay, any questions for David? Aaron, over here.
Did I answer every question?
I just wondered if you had any headline insights as to the different motivations between the Chinese and the US market, given that our focus is today. Maybe putting you on the spot a little bit, but is there any big difference between those two in terms of youth travel into Europe?
Yes, I think we're seeing I think I'm teaching you all to suck eggs a little bit here. We're seeing a big growth in the middle classes in China, and we're starting to see big outbound trips, as we know, from China. The US is a big market. The UK, I think, is 3rd or 4th of the most desirable countries to visit, with the US still sitting at the top of it. Yeah, I think all of these markets are essential, and I think what is important for everybody to remember here is don't forget the youth travel element. It's very easy to look at the traditional tourist and think that is actually the market that you want, and of course it is part of the mix. What's unseen is that young people are spending more, they are staying longer in destinations, and our research shows that young people go back to destinations over many times. So if you attract a young traveller who has a good experience to start with, then they will go back to destination many times.
Anyone else? Questions for David? Youth travel, educational travel? Doesn't seem to be the... Well, we have one up here.
I'm coming from the buyer side, from China, because I was in Amsterdam this year. Fortunately enough, was one of the participation for the buyer program for your conference in Amsterdam, time back to January. And in moment, actually, we are doing some business to send the young students, the kids come to the UK mainly, and other European countries as well. If come to your definition about the youth travel, seems China is very special, very quite different to your definition. Because when we're talking about the summer camp, winter camp, our kids come out for the study English is like 8, 9 years old. Sometimes even it's not accepted by the Oxford or Cambridge, only because they are very well known. And when I talking about a little bit, grow up, we're talking about 12 to 14 years old. It's like the boarding school students. They, the parents actually send the kids to the UK and the other European countries for the boarding school. So if that is a fact, is sort of the scenario. My question would be, so seems the China market is a little bit out of your, definition of the youth travel, whatever. So what do you, with a little bit confused here, just because for myself, I think, so what do you think as a professional, you're working in this industry, what do you think the China's youth travel for the future? Is it come to your mainstream or is it playing a different ground?
I'm sorry, I didn't really catch the question. Did you, Peter?
No. What do you make of the educational market out of China, especially with as I understand it, the younger students coming out of China to Europe? How is that qualitatively different, or the similarities to educational travel from elsewhere?
Firstly, I need to point out that WYSE works predominantly with 17 to 29-year-olds, so I don't really have that much information. I did catch part of the question about schools and younger people at boarding school, but I'm afraid I can't really comment on that.
The reason, because I'm saying 17 to 29, because we don't have too much ability to apply the individual visa to do the backpackers like Korean or the other countries. So that is a barrier. So usually people travel during that age, 17 to 29, probably is sort of the come with group or the family at the individual group. The question I would like to know...
I'm really sorry, but I can't hear you, I'm afraid. I can't hear you.
But if you could repeat your question, please. Go ahead.
Well, I just want to, because when we look at your... can you hear me now?
I
Not
can't
really.
hear you clearly, I'm sorry.
Don't worry, maybe we can have a little bit discussion afterwards.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll take it there. Thank you very much. Okay, time's running, so I think we should give a big hand to David. Thank you.